This is part 2 of the review of exponent laws. You've already seen these rules before in the previous video, but what we're going to do is just elaborate on them a little bit in this video. So first of all, we have a product right here. A is multiplying B. Now when you take that product and you put it to the power of something, that exponent is going to affect each of the components of the product. You're going to get A to the power of M multiplying B to the power of M. Now the same thing happens when you have a quotient. So here I have A divided by B. That quotient put to the power of something means that the exponent is going to affect both the numerator and the denominator. So you're going to get A to the power of M divided by B to the power of M. For a power of a power, when you have some sort of a product inside the bracket, so A is multiplying x to the power of M. The A has an exponent, it's an invisible 1. We usually just don't write it because it's a little redundant. We're going to use the exact same power of a power rule that we saw in the last video. This n is going to multiply each of the exponents of the components. So you have n times 1, that's going to give you A to the power of n. N times n gives you x to the power of mn. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to continue on to number 4 from the previous video. Now number 4 asks us to simplify, and we want to make sure that our answers are in positive exponents. Here we have a product, 3 times y, and each of those components is going to be affected by the 4. 3 to the power of 4 and y to the power of 4. So the 3 to the power of 4 is a coefficient, and since it's a coefficient, we have to evaluate it. That means we have to figure out the answer. 3 to the power of 4 is just 81. And then we write the y to the power of 4 beside it. Now that's our final answer. The next one looks a little bit complicated. We have two brackets and they're multiplying. Then within those brackets, there's a whole bunch of things that are multiplying each other. So one thing that I like to do is I just like to match the colors, and it helps me to organize my thoughts. So -6 is eventually going to multiply this coefficient, and it was invisible, it's a -1. Then we have our A's, which are going to multiply, and our B's. Okay, so why don't we write that out in full? We have our -6, which is multiplying with our -1. A to the -1 times A to the -3. And then B squared times B to the -4. All right. What we're going to do now is just use the rules that we learned in the previous video, where if you have rules for products, you're going to add the exponents. Okay, now the 6 and the 1, they don't really have the same base. We're just going to multiply them together like normal, and we're going to get a +6. So that's our coefficient, that's done. We have A to the -1 plus -3. And then B2 plus -4. Okay, so the next step is 6, A to the -4, and B to the -2. Okay, so that's pretty much done. We're done simplifying. What we want to do now is make sure that we have all positive exponents. So again, that was a rule from the previous video. We have 6. We're going to flip the A upside down, and then that's going to be to a positive exponent. We do the same with the B. Now that 6 is with a 1 on the bottom. Okay, so we have 6 over 1. 1 to the power of 4 is just 1, and then A to the power of 4 is A4. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Okay, now our final answer is going to be the 6 times the 1 times the 1. You're going to get 6. The 1 times the A4 times the B2 is A4B2. Okay, now everything has a positive exponent. All right, the last two. Notice that I always put an equal sign in front because we have the first step which equals the next step and so on. Okay, so we have this quotient and it's to the power of 3. So technically we have 3 affecting everything up here and then the 3 affecting everything down there. So it should look something like this. Divided by 4v cubed. Okay, now remember, the 3 is going to affect the negative 3 and the u. So we have negative 3 cubed, u cubed. And then we have the 4 cubed and the v cubed. And since this guy is our coefficient, we want to figure out the answer. So negative 3 cubed is negative 27. 4 cubed is 64. And I'm just going to write the variables beside it. Okay, now if you can break down your fraction, you want to break it down. And I don't believe that that can break down any further, negative 27 over 64, so we're just going to leave it the way it is. Lastly, a division. So if you want to, you could always write it like this, and 2 divided by 2m negative 1 and negative 6. And again, if you want to color coordinate it, you can, where you have these guys affecting each other, these guys affecting each other, and then these guys affecting each other. All right, so you have negative 6 divided by 2, and that's going to give me negative 3. Then you have m, and remember that when you're dividing and you have the same base, you're going to subtract the exponents. So that's negative 4, subtract negative 1. And then same base, 2, subtract negative 6. Equals negative 3, m to the negative 3, and n to the 8. Okay, so we have one negative exponent in there. We want to make sure that we flip it upside down and put a positive exponent. Okay, and that's multiplying your n to the power of 8. All right, now there's a 1 underneath this, and then also a 1 underneath this. Okay, so negative 3 over 1. We're going to cube, so 1 cubed is just 1, and then m cubed is m cubed, and 8 over 1 equals 3 times 1 times n8 is negative 3 n8 over 1 times m3 times 1 is going to be m3, and now everything has positive exponents, so we're happy.